Now we want to begin the actual installation process of Kali Linux. To do that, I click on Start, and you'll notice that a pop-up box appears with the Kali Linux installation process within the screen. Here we go. Now if I click the mouse in here, it takes over that particular machine, so I can use the mouse within that. If I then want to go out of this and go to the host machine, I need to press the right control key to get back to the VM VirtualBox itself. So now I'll just click on capture. I have the option here of selecting live or install. If I just want to test it out, I'd click on live. But because we're actually installing this operating system, I'll click on install, and that will begin the installation process. So let's go through some of the options here. While this is installing, it's going to ask me to select the language. I will select English. Obviously, you can select whatever language that you're comfortable with. But for now, just click on English. I can select the region. Obviously, whichever region you are in, you'd select that. Right now, I'll select United States. Or pretty much any country. Wherever you are, select the country you are closest to. Key map. I'll just select American. That's fine. And that will install a few more things. And we'll just wait now while the installation process runs through. There will be some options for some more settings, but that's the basic setup is happening as we speak. And I'll just wait while this loads up. This is installing on a virtual machine. So let's just go through this. Now I have the option of selecting a host name. It's got Kali as the host name. I can obviously change that if I want to. But for right now, it's fine. Kali is perfectly okay. You select whatever is perfect for you. And then I hit continue. Now, as we go through, we need to select a domain name. We obviously don't have a domain name at this point, so we need to create a domain name. It doesn't have to be anything specific. It can be very generic. So you think of what's useful for you. I'm just going to type in test.local, and that will be what I use for configuring this particular network. I hit continue, and now we get to a password, the root password. You will pick a password that you're going to remember easily, and make sure you write it down somewhere safe so you can come back to it. I'll just type in a password here, and the next step allows me to verify this password. Once I verify this password, it allows me to configure the clock. Obviously, because I selected US time, I can select any of these options. You can come back and change this later on. I'm just going to continue for now. And the next step will be a very important step of the whole process. This is where you partition the hard disk. Now, if you at home don't have a VirtualBox and are going to use it to dual boot your Windows and another operating system like Kali Linux, you need to be very careful. Because we're using a VirtualBox, I could use a guided setup, but because I want to show you what would happen if you were doing this at home, I need to go to manual so I can show you how dual boot is possible. So I click on manual here, and that will allow you to do the same at home so you can dual boot different operating systems. Let's go into manual now, and the next step would be to actually partition the hard drive. Now, with that being selected, let's go to the partition mode. I could select any of these options here. Let me just see which one. I'm going to select the middle option here. Just click continue, and that will take me to actually start creating the partition. So create new empty partition table. Yes, I need to click on yes here so I can start creating a new partition table. Now it allows me to select the device where I want to do the partition. I've got 21.5 gigabyte available here on the virtual box. I'm just going to click on this and create a new partition. Now to create a new partition, I can create a 500 megabyte partition on this. This 500 megabyte partition is the boot partition, being the first partition, so it has the boot information to actually system to use and boot up the system correctly. So I select 500 megabyte, doesn't have to be huge, and I click on continue. We'll select primary at this point because operating systems that need a boot drive will need a primary partition setup so that it can boot from that drive. We will select the beginning here, and in here I'm going to select, I think I'll select ext3. I'll explain that in a second. I go to mount point as boot. The rest seems pretty much okay. I'm done setting up the partition, but ext3, older operating systems will have difficulty understanding ext4. The BIOS will have difficulty understanding the ext4. So if you've got an older operating system, it's best to use ext3. If you've got a new operating system, you're more than welcome to use ext4. For now, I'll just use ext3, and I'm done setting up this partition, so I can then move on to the next step. So I click on done setting up the partition. Now we move on to the next step. And here we notice that we've got two partitions. We've got a primary partition of just under 500 megabyte, and we've got this other partition which has 21 gigabyte here. So what we need to do now is create another partition which will be the swap partition. So we do that by going in here and creating that, and this will allow, if the RAM gets a bit low, we can then use the swap partition to allocate some of the RAM to and allow the system to be more stable and not run out of memory. So we create another primary partition here. We go into we want to go and set this as a swap partition. So let me just see where that setting is. Let me go into this ext4 journaling file system and make sure I think I'm in the wrong section. So let me just go back out of this for a second and go into enables that RAM usage if needed to make sure there is a buffer of RAM in the swap area. So I go on and create this. So now you'll see there are three partitions. There's two primary partitions, one being a boot area, one being the swap area, and the third area is the free space where the data will be located. So I'll just click on this for a second and just make sure that's going to be where all the data is. You'll notice that I need to partition this as well. So create this third partition, which will be 17 gigabytes. Create that as primary as well. And I go in here. I'll select this as ext4. The boot area was ext3. The mount point is fine. All the rest of the settings is fine. And I can go into done setting up the partition. And once I save this, I can now go to three partitions: boot area, swap area, and the free space area. And if I go to finish partitioning and write changes to disk, this will allow me to confirm that. I click on yes. Once I click yes, this will start creating the three partitions and start installing the Kali Linux system. So while this installation is going, this might take a little bit of a while. That means we've partitioned our hard drives correctly. We've got the three partitions: a boot area, a swap area, and a free space area. And I will let this Kali Linux install, and we will see you in the next video.